On that day, I stood outside my son's house with homemade cookies and a Mother's Day card, ready to surprise him. Instead, I heard him tell his wife, "Mom doesn't matter anymore, she's just a burden we tolerate." Those words shattered my heart, but they also awakened something fierce within me that would change our family forever. If you are watching this, kindly subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. And I hope that you're safe, wherever you are. The morning started like any other Mother's Day for the past 10 years. I woke up at 6, made fresh chocolate chip cookies, and drove across town to spend time with my son David and his family. At 72, these traditions meant everything to me. I parked outside their beautiful 2-story home in the suburbs. The house I'd helped them buy with my late husband's life insurance money, though David never knew that part. The down payment had come from me, disguised as a gift from his deceased father. I grabbed my purse and the tin of cookies, walking up the familiar stone pathway. The front door was slightly open, letting the spring breeze carry voices from inside. I was about to knock when I heard David's voice, clear and cold. "I'm telling you, Sarah, we need to set boundaries. Mom thinks she can just show up whenever she wants." My hand froze halfway to the door. "She's lonely, David," my daughter-in-law Sarah replied. "Since your father died, we're all she has." "That's exactly the problem." David's voice grew sharper. "She's clingy and needy, always bringing food like we can't feed ourselves, always asking about the kids like she's entitled to every detail of their lives." The cookies felt heavy in my hands. These were the same recipes I'd taught his ex-wife, the same ones he'd begged me to make when he was going through his divorce 5 years ago. "Maybe we should include her more," Sarah suggested weakly. "Include her in what? She doesn't understand our world anymore. She never finished college. She worked at that diner for 30 years. What could she possibly contribute to our conversations about my law practice or the kids' private school?" Each word landed like a physical blow. The diner where I'd worked double shifts to pay for his education. The college I'd never finished because I was raising him alone after his father left when David was 8. "You're being harsh," Sarah said. "I'm being realistic. Mom doesn't matter anymore. She's just a burden we tolerate because she's family. Once the kids are older and don't need a babysitter, we won't even need her for that." I stumbled backward, the tin slipping from my numb fingers. It clattered against the concrete steps, the sound echoing in the quiet morning. Inside, the voices stopped abruptly. "What was that?" Sarah asked. "Probably a delivery truck," David said, his tone already shifting back to casual. "Now about our trip to Europe this summer. I think we should book those first-class tickets I mentioned." The Europe trip I was secretly funding through monthly transfers to his checking account. The first-class tickets that would cost more than most people made in 6 months. Money he thought came from his law practice's success, not from his mother's careful savings and his father's death benefits. I picked up the scattered cookies, my hands shaking with more than age. 37 years of raising him. 10 years of silent financial support since his divorce. Countless hours of babysitting, cooking, cleaning, and caring. And I was just a burden they tolerated. I sat in my car outside their house, memories flooding back like a broken dam. David didn't know the truth about those early years. He'd been too young to understand the sacrifices, too protected to see the struggle. When Robert walked out on us, David was 8 years old. I had a high school diploma and a job waiting tables at Murphy's Diner. The divorce papers gave me nothing but full custody and the overwhelming responsibility of raising a boy who asked every night when Daddy was coming home. "Never," I would whisper after he fell asleep, holding him close while I calculated bills on the back of napkins. Rent, groceries, daycare, clothes that he outgrew faster than I could afford to replace them. I worked the morning shift at Murphy's, then cleaned office buildings at night. David stayed with Mrs. Henderson next door, an elderly woman who charged less than professional daycare because she understood single mothers. While other kids played after school, David did homework in Murphy's back booth, eating free French fries and listening to me take orders. "Why do you work so much, Mom?" he asked one night. 8 years old, and trying to understand why I missed his school play. "Because I love you," I said, too tired to explain that love sometimes looks like absence when you're choosing between being present and keeping the lights on. By the time he turned 16, I was working 3 jobs. Mornings at the diner, afternoons at the department store, evenings cleaning the law offices downtown. I saved every extra dollar in a coffee can hidden behind the flour in our tiny kitchen. College money for the son who dreamed of being a lawyer, like the ones whose offices I scrubbed. You should date, Mom. He told me when he turned 18. You're still young enough. Young enough at 46, but too tired to imagine starting over. Too focused on his acceptance letters to think about my own loneliness. Harvard, Yale, Columbia. Full scholarships to schools I'd only seen in movies, earned by the boy I'd raised in a one-bedroom apartment above the laundromat. I'm proud of you, I whispered the night before he left for Harvard. We were packing his suitcase with clothes from the Goodwill store, trying to make them look presentable enough for the world he was entering. I'll pay you back someday, he promised. When I'm a successful lawyer, I'll buy you a house and take care of you. But success changed him. The summers he came home, he talked about his roommate's family's vacation house in the Hamptons, his girlfriend's father's law firm, the connections that would define his future. He stopped noticing the worn furniture, or the way I still worked double shifts to help with his expenses. After graduation, he moved to California, then Chicago, then back home, but to the suburbs where successful lawyers lived, not the old neighborhood where his mother had raised him. His wedding was beautiful. I wore a dress I'd saved 6 months to buy, sat in the front pew, and watched him marry a woman whose father owned 3 law firms. Sarah was lovely, but she looked at me like I was a curiosity from David's past, something he'd outgrown but kept around out of duty. The divorce 5 years later brought him back, broken and angry. I helped with lawyer fees, with the custody arrangements, with rent on a new apartment. I babysat Emma and Michael while he rebuilt his practice. I cooked dinners and did laundry and listened to him vent about his ex-wife's demands. You're the only one who's always been there, Mom, he told me then. I don't know what I'd do without you. But people forget gratitude once their crisis passes. He remarried Sarah, moved to the big house, rebuilt his success. The financial help I provided became invisible. Automatic transfers he thought were investment returns or bonuses. The babysitting became expected. The emotional support became background noise. And somewhere along the way, I became just another burden to tolerate. What David didn't know could fill a bank vault. Literally, after Robert left, I'd done more than work multiple jobs. I'd invested every spare dollar with a ruthlessness born of desperation. While he slept, I studied investment guides from the library. I learned about compound interest and dividend yields, and growth stocks. The coffee can behind the flour became a high-yield savings account, then mutual funds, then a diverse portfolio that grew steadily over 30 years. Robert's life insurance payout had been substantial. Guilt money, I called it, since he'd kept the policy active even after abandoning his family. When he died in a car accident 15 years ago, the $250,000 benefit went straight into investments. David was in law school then, too busy with studies and his social life to ask about funeral expenses or estate details. I lived modestly, still in the same small house I'd bought when David left for college, still shopped at discount stores and clipped coupons, but my investment account had grown to over $800,000. Not wealthy by David's current standards, but enough to change lives. For the past 10 years, since his divorce, I'd been David's silent financial guardian angel. His mortgage payments, when clients were slow to pay, money from Mom's account, the down payment on Sarah's BMW, Mom's money, the kids' private school tuition, Mom's money, the family vacations to Disney World and Hawaii, all subsidized by the woman he now called a burden. $5,000 here for Emma's dental work, $3,000 there for Michael's soccer camp, $15,000 for the kitchen renovation Sarah had insisted on, $25,000 for David's new office suite downtown, all transferred quietly from my accounts to theirs, disguised as gifts or loans that were never meant to be repaid. I kept meticulous records in a leather journal hidden in my bedroom closet. Every transfer, every date, every excuse I'd given. The total was staggering, over $200,000 in the past decade alone. Money that had funded the lifestyle he thought his legal practice afforded. But it wasn't just money, it was time, energy, love freely given, and apparently unappreciated. Hundreds of hours babysitting Emma and Michael, thousands of meals cooked and delivered, countless loads of laundry done, while Sarah worked late. or David traveled for business. I'd been their invisible support system, the grandmother who made their ambitious lives possible, and now I was just a burden they tolerated. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The balance stared back at me, $847,293.17. Enough to fund their lifestyle for years to come, or enough to teach some very expensive lessons about gratitude and respect. I thought about Emma and Michael, innocent children who loved their grandmother's cookies and bedtime stories. They didn't deserve to suffer for their parents' arrogance, but they also deserved to learn what their father apparently never had: that love and support aren't guaranteed, that kindness should be treasured, that taking people for granted has consequences. I scrolled through my recent transfers to David's account, the mortgage payment I'd covered last month when his biggest client delayed payment, the credit card bill I'd quietly handled when Sarah's shopping spree exceeded their budget, the upcoming summer camp deposits for both kids that I'd already scheduled to transfer next week. My finger hovered over the cancel transfer button. David thought he was successful, independent, the self-made lawyer who'd risen above his humble beginnings. He had no idea that his mother, the burden he barely tolerated, was the foundation holding up his entire house of cards. But he was about to find out exactly how much this burden had been carrying. I rang the doorbell like a proper visitor this time. No more surprise visits from the needy old mother who didn't understand boundaries. When David opened the door, his smile looked painted on. "Mom, we weren't expecting you." "I know." I held up the rescued tin of cookies. "I brought these for Mother's Day. Since I matter so little, I figured I should at least contribute something useful." His face went white. Behind him, Sarah appeared in the hallway, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom, what are you talking about? The conversation you had 30 minutes ago about how I don't matter anymore, about how I'm just a burden you tolerate, about how I can't contribute anything to your world because I'm an uneducated diner waitress who doesn't understand your sophisticated life." David stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Damage control. You misunderstood. I was just being honest about how you really see me. Look, sometimes I say things when I'm stressed." Sarah and I were discussing our schedules, and I got overwhelmed thinking about managing everyone's needs. Everyone's needs. As if my existence was just another item on his calendar to manage. Overwhelmed by managing me, I kept my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "Tell me, David, how exactly do you manage me? What burden do I place on your life?" He shifted uncomfortably. "You know what I mean. Family obligations, expectations, having to include you in our plans. Having to include me." I repeated the words slowly. "Like when I babysit Emma and Michael every Friday night, so you and Sarah can have date nights. Like when I bring dinner when Sarah works late. Like when I do your laundry when you're traveling for trials. I appreciate those things, but you see them as burdens. Things you have to tolerate because I'm family." David ran his hand through his hair, the gesture he'd used since childhood when caught in trouble. "Mom, you're being dramatic. Can we discuss this inside like adults?" "Adults?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean like the adult conversation you had about how I don't understand your world, about how I never finished college, so I can't contribute to discussions about your law practice. That came out wrong. Did it, or did it come out exactly right, and you're just embarrassed you got caught?" Sarah opened the front door. "Everything okay out here? The neighbors are starting to look." The neighbors, always worried about appearances, never about substance. "Actually, Sarah, since you're here, I have something for both of you." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to my banking app. "David, what did your law practice gross last year?" "Mom, that's not appropriate." 200,000, 300. "I'm curious about this successful career that apparently makes me irrelevant." His jaw tightened. "My finances aren't your concern." "You're right, they're not." I turned the phone screen toward them. "But mine might be yours." Sarah gasped. David stared at the number on the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "That's impossible," he whispered. "You work at a diner." "Worked, past tense. I retired 5 years ago, though you've been too busy being successful to notice." "But how?" "Investments. 30 years of careful saving and smart financial planning. The kind of planning you apparently think I'm too uneducated to understand. David's face went through several colors. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I didn't want money to change our relationship. I wanted you to love me for being your mother, not for what I could provide. I paused, letting that sink in. Funny how that worked out. But showing them the money was only the beginning of their education. David stared at my phone screen like it might change if he looked long enough. $800,000. More money than he'd probably seen in one place outside of real estate transactions. Mom, I don't understand. If you have all this money, why do you live in that little house? Why do you shop at thrift stores? Why do you act like what? Like a poor old woman who worked at a diner. I put my phone away. Because that's who I am, David. Money doesn't change your character, though it certainly reveals it in others. Sarah grabbed David's arm. This changes everything. Your mother could help with the mortgage payments, the kids' college funds, maybe even our investment property idea. The speed with which she moved from dismissing me to calculating my usefulness would have been impressive if it weren't so disgusting. Help with mortgage payments. I repeated slowly. You mean the ones I've been making for the past 6 months? David's face went gray. What are you talking about? I pulled out my leather journal from my purse. 30 pages of meticulous records, every transfer documented and dated. March 15th. Transferred $4,000 to cover your mortgage when the Henderson case settlement was delayed. April 3rd. Paid Sarah's credit card bill, $3,200 for her shopping weekend in Chicago. April 20th. Transferred $1,500 for Michael's soccer equipment and tournament fees. With each entry, David's expression grew more stricken. Sarah's eyes widened as she apparently began calculating how much of their lifestyle had been subsidized. May 1st, down payment on Emma's summer art camp, $2,000. May 10th, kitchen appliance repairs after Sarah's dinner party, $1,800. I flipped the page. Should I continue? You've been this whole time. David sank onto the porch steps. For 10 years, since your divorce. Every time you struggled financially, every time you had an unexpected expense, every time Sarah wanted something your actual income couldn't cover, I covered it quietly, invisibly, because I thought that's what mothers do. We support our children without keeping score. Sarah was doing calculations in her head. I could see it in her expression. How much total? $237,000 over the past decade. Plus the down payment on this house, which was $50,000 from your father's life insurance. Plus the car payments I've been making, the insurance premiums, the utility bills when your practice was struggling. David put his head in his hands. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. Because every time I tried to help, you took credit for your own success. Because you convinced yourself you were self-made, independent, successful on your own merits. I thought my practice was doing better than it was. Your practice is barely breaking even. Without my financial support, you would have lost this house 2 years ago. Sarah's BMW, my money, the kids' private school, my tuition payments, your office downtown. I co-signed the lease and pay half the rent. The silence stretched between us. Two successful professionals discovering that their entire lifestyle was built on the generosity of the woman they'd just finished dismissing as irrelevant. Mom. David finally looked up. I'm sorry, I said those things in frustration, but I didn't mean. You meant every word. And you know what? You're right about one thing. I don't matter anymore. Sarah leaned forward eagerly. Of course you matter. Your family. We love you. Love me. I laughed, closing my journal. You love my money. You love my free babysitting. You love having someone to take for granted when life gets stressful. But me, the person I am, you just told your wife I'm a burden you tolerate. That was wrong of me, David said quickly. I was stressed about work, about money I've been providing without your knowledge, stress I've been relieving without recognition. But you're right, David. It's time for some boundaries. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Starting today, no more transfers, no more mortgage payments, no more credit card bills, no more private school tuition or car payments, or office rent subsidies. You can't just cut us off, Sarah said, panic creeping into her voice. We have expenses, commitments, that you made assuming you could afford them, which you can't. Without my support, You'll need to downsize significantly. David jumped up. Mom, please, let's talk about this rationally. I made a mistake, but don't punish Emma and Michael for my thoughtless words. But I wasn't finished teaching them about consequences. You're worried about Emma and Michael. I looked at David with surprise. The grandchildren you barely let me see anymore because I'm too clingy, the ones whose lives I apparently can't contribute to because I don't understand your sophisticated world. They love you, Mom. You know that. I know they love my cookies and bedtime stories. But what have you taught them about respect, about gratitude, about not taking people for granted? Sarah stepped forward, her real estate agent smile bright and desperate. We can fix this. Maybe we could set up a more formal arrangement where you're more involved in family decisions. Make you feel more valued. Make me feel valued. The words tasted bitter. You mean make me feel valued now that you know I have money? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. An hour ago, I was a burden. Now I'm family again. What changed, Sarah? My bank balance or your opinion of me? David tried a different approach. Look, I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. Maybe you could move in with us, be more involved with the kids. We could be a real family again. Move in with you. I stared at him. Into the house I helped buy, so I can be more available to subsidize your lifestyle and provide free childcare. How generous of you. That's not how I meant it. Then how did you mean it? Because right now, it sounds like you're trying to manage me more efficiently. Keep the burden closer so you can maximize the benefits while minimizing the inconvenience. Emma and Michael appeared at the front window, pressing their faces against the glass. Beautiful children who deserved better than parents who taught them to use people and discard them when convenient. I want to see my grandchildren, I said quietly. But not as your live-in servant, not as the woman you tolerate because she pays your bills. Then what do you want? David asked. I want you to learn what I had to learn 34 years ago when your father walked out. I want you to understand what it means to stand on your own, to make sacrifices, to choose between what you want and what you can afford. Sarah's voice got shrill. You're going to destroy our family over a misunderstanding. I'm not destroying anything. You did that when you decided I didn't matter. I'm just removing myself as your safety net. You're both educated, capable adults. Figure it out. What about the mortgage payment due next week? David asked desperately. The credit cards. The kids' school. What about them? You're successful lawyers. Handle it the way any other family would handle their own financial responsibilities. I started walking toward my car, but David followed. Mom, please. Don't do this out of anger. Think about what you're really doing here. I turned back to face him. I'm doing what you wanted. I'm giving you boundaries. I'm removing the burden of managing me from your life. You should be celebrating. I don't want boundaries. I want my mother, your mother or your bank account. That's not fair. Fair. I pulled my car keys from my purse. Is it fair that I worked 3 jobs to put you through school while you were embarrassed by my lack of education? Is it fair that I've supported your lifestyle for 10 years while you convinced yourself you were self-made? Is it fair that I've given you everything I had while you told your wife I don't matter anymore? David's shoulders sagged. What do you want me to do? I want you to prove that I matter for more than my money. I want you to show me that the man I raised understands the difference between loving someone and using them. How? Figure it out. You're brilliant. Remember, Harvard Law School graduate, successful attorney. Surely you can solve this problem without your uneducated mother's help. But David was about to discover just how much he'd taken for granted. 2 weeks later, my phone started ringing. The first calls were angry. David demanding I stop this childish behavior and act like an adult. Sarah leaving voicemails about how I was destroying the family and traumatizing the children. But by the 3rd week, the tone changed. David's voice was smaller, uncertain. Mom, I need to talk to you. Can you call me back? I didn't. Week 4 brought desperate messages. The mortgage company had called. Private school tuition was past due. Sarah's credit cards were maxed out, and the bank was threatening to repossess her BMW. Please, Mom. David's voice cracked in his latest voicemail. I know I hurt you, but Emma's asking why Grandma doesn't come over anymore. Michael keeps asking if you're sick. Just, please call me back. I almost weakened then. Almost drove over to fix everything like I always did. But I thought about his words. She doesn't matter anymore. And I stayed strong. Week 6 brought the breakthrough. A knock on my door at 7 in the morning. I opened it to find Emma and Michael on my porch, still in their pajamas, with David standing behind them looking haggard and humbled. Grandma. Emma threw herself into my arms. Daddy said we could visit if we walked here ourselves. We missed your cookies, Michael added, wrapping his arms around my waist. I looked over their heads at David. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he needed a shave. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside, letting them into my small living room. Emma and Michael ran to their usual spots. Emma to the bookshelf where I kept picture books. Michael to the toy box in the corner. Normal children, happy to be with someone who loved them unconditionally. David sat heavily on my couch. We had to sell the house. I poured him coffee, waiting. Sarah left last week, took her jewelry, and moved back to her father's house. Says she didn't sign up for financial struggle and social embarrassment. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I'd never wanted his marriage to fail. "I'm not." He looked up at me with eyes that seemed older than his 39 years. "Turns out you can learn a lot about someone when the money runs out. The children are with me. Sarah gets them every other weekend, but she's already talking about how her new apartment isn't suitable for children full-time." His laugh was bitter. Funny how quickly weekend visits become too much responsibility when there's no nanny or grandmother doing the actual work. Emma climbed onto my lap with a picture book. "Grandma, will you read to me? Daddy's been too busy looking for a new house." "Of course, sweetheart." I opened the familiar story, but kept watching David. "Where are you living now?" "Apartment across town. 2 bedrooms, no dishwasher, no granite countertops. The kids are adjusting better than I expected. Turns out they don't actually need private school and designer clothes to be happy. And your practice?" "Downsized. Moved to a smaller office, let go of the fancy furniture and expensive location, taking on more clients, working longer hours, but I'm actually earning what I'm spending now." He paused. "It's a novel concept." I read Emma her story, while Michael played with wooden blocks I'd saved from David's childhood. Simple toys, simple pleasures. The kids seemed content, unaware that their lifestyle had imploded around them. "Mom," David said when the children were distracted, "I need to tell you something. I understand now. What you did all those years, raising me alone. I thought I knew, but I didn't." "Not really." His voice broke slightly. "I've been working 16-hour days just to cover rent and groceries." Emma asked why we can't have pizza delivered anymore. And I had to explain that some things are luxuries, not necessities. She's 7 years old, and she already understands better than I did at 39. I closed the picture book, waiting for him to continue. "I went back to our old neighborhood last week. Drove past the apartment where you raised me. It's smaller than I remembered, so much smaller. And I realized, God, Mom, I realized you did all of this alone, without any help, without any safety net. You worked 3 jobs and never complained. You sacrificed everything and never made me feel like I was a burden. You weren't a burden. You were my purpose. But I made you feel like one. When I had everything you gave me, I treated you like an obligation." Tears ran down his face. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I took you for granted. I'm sorry I was embarrassed by you. I'm sorry I let money make me forget who I am and where I came from." Emma looked up from her book. "Why is Daddy crying?" "Because sometimes grown-ups need to say sorry for making mistakes," I told her. "And saying sorry can make you feel sad and happy at the same time." But David still had one more lesson to learn. "I don't want your money back," David said firmly. "I know I can't pay it back anyway, but that's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" "Because Emma asks about you every day. Because Michael keeps setting a place for you at dinner. Because I realized that losing Sarah's respect hurt my pride, but the thought of losing your love is killing my soul." I looked at my son, really looked at him. Gone was the arrogant lawyer who dismissed his mother as irrelevant. In his place sat a humbled man who'd been forced to confront his own character and found it wanting. I can't go back to the way things were, I said gently. I won't be taken for granted again. I don't want you to. I want something different, something real. What does that mean? David knelt on the floor in front of my chair, like he used to do as a child when he needed to have a serious conversation. It means I want to earn back your respect, not your money, your respect. I want to be the man you raised me to be, not the man success turned me into. And how do you plan to do that? By starting over, by building a relationship based on who we are, not what we can provide each other. By teaching Emma and Michael what you taught me, that love isn't conditional, that family isn't about convenience, that respect is earned through actions, not demanded through guilt. Emma abandoned her book and crawled over to sit between us. Are you going to live with us again, Grandma? I think Grandma should stay in her own house, David answered before I could speak. But maybe we could have dinner together sometimes. Maybe Daddy could learn to make cookies as good as Grandma's. That's impossible, Michael said seriously, making all of us laugh. Over the next few months, we rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. David visited every Sunday, bringing the children and helping with yard work, not because he needed something, but because he wanted to spend time together. He enrolled in a cooking class so he could make proper meals for Emma and Michael. He found a modest house in a good school district and took out a legitimate mortgage he could afford on his actual income. The financial crisis had stripped away all the pretense and revealed what mattered: time spent together, conversations that mattered, children who felt loved and secure regardless of their zip code or the brand of their clothes. But I had one more surprise for David. On Emma's 8th birthday, I handed him an envelope. Inside was a legal document transferring a trust fund I'd established years earlier, not for David, but for Emma and Michael's college education. Money they'd earned through good grades and community service, not money given without thought or appreciation. Mom, I can't accept this. It's not for you, it's for them. But only if they prove they understand the value of education, hard work, and treating others with kindness. The same values I tried to teach their father. David's eyes filled with tears again. Do you think I learned them? Finally, I looked at my son, who now called before visiting, who helped with groceries instead of eating my food without thanks, who talked to me about his work and asked about my interests like I was a real person with valuable thoughts. I think, I said, hugging him close, that sometimes the most important lessons take the longest to learn. Emma blew out her candles that night, in my small kitchen, surrounded by homemade decorations and simple gifts. Michael helped serve cake on mismatched plates. David washed dishes while telling me about his cases, asking for my advice, like my opinion mattered. And for the first time in years, I felt like I truly mattered, not as an ATM, or a babysitter, or a burden to be tolerated, but as a mother, grandmother, and woman deserving of love and respect. The best part wasn't the money I'd saved, or the lesson I'd taught. It was seeing my grandchildren learn that love isn't about what you have, it's about how you treat the people who matter most. Have you ever felt taken for granted by your own family? What would you do if you discovered your loved ones saw you as nothing more than a burden? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that every person, especially our mothers and grandmothers, deserves to be valued for more than what they can provide. Thank you for watching, and remember, the people who love you unconditionally are the most precious gifts you'll ever receive. Don't wait until it's too late to show them they matter.